So hello and welcome to Let's Talk About It, a podcast created by the FUSE, an outreach initiative within the College of Applied Studies and recorded with the help of the Elliott School of Communication here at Wichita State University. I am Bobby Berry, the director of the FUSE and your host for today's podcast. In today's episode, we will be talking about today's student athlete. More specifically, we will be answering the question, can you be successful at being both a student and a college athlete? Here to discuss the balance between being a college student and being a college athlete is Dr. Mike Ross, Assistant Professor in the Department of Sport Management and Coordinator of the E-Leadership Program. Welcome, Mike.
Thank you.
Also joining us today is Sarah Mathews, Director of Compliance in WSU Athletics Department. Thank you for being here, Sarah.
Thank you.
All right, so Mike, I'm going to start with you today. Let's give our listeners a little bit of background about you. So why did you choose the field of sport management, and what courses do you teach for our program?
I chose the field of sport management because of my passion for sport. That dates all the way back into the early ages of me. But ultimately, I started college thinking that I wanted to be a doctor. So I was a biomedical science major.
I never knew that about you.
And it all came to a crashing halt when I had an organic chemistry class at 7 a.m. with a professor that I didn't exactly see eye to eye with, we'll put it that way. And I realized this is not for me. So I actually began the transition to sport management at that point, took some classes when I moved to Kansas, and then ended up here at WSU and finished in sport management in both my undergrad and graduate degree.
And so you've been here in our program for how long now?
As a teacher?
Yeah.
Year 11 in January.
Nice. And so you currently teach what courses?
A little bit of everything. I have a background in public relations, so I teach some of our public relations courses, and then I also teach some courses in our new degree program, the Workforce Leadership and Applied Learning, so Principles of Leadership and a couple of other courses that are kind of devoted to leadership and improvement of organizations.
And our graduate coordinator as well.
That's true, yeah. So I teach graduate courses and then help kind of manage our way with the grad program.
Nice. So Sarah, I'm going to turn to you, and Director of Compliance. Mm-hmm. What exactly does a Director of Compliance do?
So the compliance office in an athletic department is in charge of making sure that the athletic department, the coaches, the staff, the institution is abiding by Ncaa rules. So my specific responsibilities in the office include monitoring scholarships and all athletics financial aid, making sure we're following the rules set forth by the Ncaa, and that also includes like distributing our national letter of intent and our signees. So we just had signing week where we signed a whole bunch of prospects for the 21-22 school year. And then a part of my responsibilities that's not really tied to the compliance office is in charge of our student athlete development program. It's called Chakra Life Program, and we focus on leadership and identity development as well as career development and community service and that type of stuff.
So with both of these roles, are these roles that you actively pursued, or did it just kind of organically come together during your time here?
So it's kind of organic. I have a passion for student athlete development, and I started as an academic coordinator. And however, my undergrad degree is in secondary math and education, so I'm very math-brained. So when the director of compliance position came available, and they're doing primarily financial aid, those strengths of mine kind of translated naturally with the position. And then Corey Torgerson, our Associate AD for Compliance, and Becky Endicott, our Senior Woman Administrator, I had to convince them to keep the student athlete development part of my job. So that was really, I was thankful for them because that's really where my passions lie.
So what I find interesting is, over the years of my time here, we think about student athletes, and it seems as if the interesting part is student athletes are also very isolated from our normal student population on this campus. And they kind of have their routine of typically being in, practice and then, study hall, and they tend to link up together quite a bit because they kind of have that common struggle of trying to navigate as a college student and being a student athlete. And so for me, I'm always interested in trying to figure out how can they really thrive on this campus, and what does that look like? So for your particular role, are those some of the things that you're thinking about as you work with them, is from a development standpoint? And kind of what are those conversations like?
Yeah, absolutely. They know when they come here they have to be a student and that they have to play their sport to be a student athlete. And so where Shocker Life is coming into play is trying to make sure that they are getting access to all of the other important parts of their development that are important to all college students, that they're getting access to those types of things that fit in their busy schedule and their unique experience that it is in being a student athlete. And so that's really what we're focused on. And when it comes to the career development, they're passionate about their sport, and that can be a distraction to what they want, to them thinking about what they want to do long term as a career. So we're constantly challenging them, asking them those questions, encouraging them to get career experience through an internship, or just really challenging them to develop passions outside of their sport, because we all know most of them, that part of their identity will end as soon as they graduate.
Yeah.
And they've got to be ready for, what's next in life.
Absolutely. Mike, I'm going to shift back to you and talk a little bit about our sport management program here. So our program, sport management, has grown quite a bit over the last few years here at Wichita State, and it's Cosmo accredited and ranked within the top 25 of sport management programs in the nation. What do you attribute the success of our sport management program to?
You. Just kidding.
Yes, yes, you are.
But the people, it's people. We have incredible people that are part of this program, and that starts at the top, and it goes all the way down through adjuncts that may come on board and teach one class in a millennium. Everyone from top to bottom that is part of the program, they're just good people and aligned on the same thing, and that is preparing students for a successful future. Not necessarily always in sport, because the research tells us that folks are going to change careers 3 to 4 times.
Yeah.
Careers.
Yeah.
Yes.
Not just jobs.
Mm-hmm.
I've changed careers once. That's something that I think is kind of at the forefront of our mind, is just developing those skill sets kind of through the lens of sport that will translate with them inside of our industry and then outside of it as well down the line, if they so choose to make that transition.
One thing that I've noticed is that this particular program is probably one of the more popular programs with our student athletes. And why do you think that there is that level of popularity? I know most say, well, obviously it's a sport management degree, but I think people sometimes don't understand the complexity of a sport management degree and the diversity in which it provides. So where do you think that connection lies between our student athletes and then the program itself?
I think the connection lies within their identity as a student athlete. The things that we are talking about in class, while relevant to a variety of experiences and backgrounds and things that they are going to see in their future, it's through the lens of sport. You can talk about cheating, and you could talk about it in a higher ed setting, you could talk about it in a corporate setting, you could talk about it in all kinds of different settings, but I think where the connection comes is that when you talk about it in a sport lens, that's something they immediately have context with. And when we say, okay, let's talk about the Astros cheating scandal, then all of a sudden they have context there, because not only do they understand that, but they also have seen that in their own lives, growing up through MAYB or AAU or whatever it may be, all the way up through high school and now in college. They have immediate context that I think just resonates with them.
Absolutely. And one of the things is that I wanted to elevate and highlight that you said is it's that connection not only within the program itself and the people that work within our program, but also the connection of the student athlete to the content. And I think it's one of the things I'm really proud about this program is that it's intentional in how it applies the content to the student athletes, and that's why I think we see the level of connection there. Not only that, but also hopefully continued success and future opportunities between us and our athletics department. So Sarah, it seems like most sports have gone through some fairly recent compliance changes over the years, and this is nothing new to your world, I'm assuming. So how have the NCAA regulations impacted your job and the athletes on our campus?
Well, I mean, I think especially since we're in the era of COVID, it's always shifting and evolving. Mm-hmm. You're going to see name, image, likeness coming out very, very shortly, and that's an evolution of the rules set forth by the Ncaa, and I'm hoping we're kind of moving into an era, and you don't want to ever say common sense, because what I've learned in compliance is things aren't always, based on common sense. I have a very logical math brain, but then I'm learning you have to have an NCAA brain, which those two things aren't always the same. But I think the NCAA is moving in the right direction with name, image, likeness, and in allowing students to profit off of their name, and that works all the way from top to bottom of a student athlete, and the high-profile student athletes, and the cross-country student athlete that has their own business that they've started, allowing them to utilize their name, image, or likeness to profit. But I mean, essentially, back to your question, it's evolving, it's always changing, it's always impacting our student athletes, and a lot of them, I think, don't know how much it's really impacting their experience, but we're trying to do a lot of educating, especially when it comes to personal branding, and with the new rules coming out with name, image, likeness, doing a lot of educating them to really take advantage and ownership over their experience, rather than just maybe floating through the experience and letting things happen. They have a voice in legislation now through our Student Athlete Advisory Council, so empowering them to use those leadership skills and speak out to make changes on their experience is something we're kind of focused on doing.
I didn't know that, so that was enlightening for me. And that's one thing that even I have learned, even when I was here as an undergrad. I had a sport management minor, and Dr. Ross was one of my professors at the time. And even now, some of the things that you talk about and the way you associate personal branding with these student athletes, and just in general as an individual, I have learned quite a bit from you in that regard. And one of the things that I've learned is, sometimes with branding, the most important thing is, what are people saying when you're not in the room? And I think sometimes that really dictates a lot of things. And I think one of the things that I've noticed with a lot of student athletes is the identity piece that you talked about. And when that is removed, it's the sense of who am I? And I think that's one of the things that I've seen that I really want to work diligently on with my students who happen to be student athletes. With that being said, obviously, one of the things that you have mentioned is this whole notion of regulations and policies, and over time how they've changed. And I know that you stay steadfast in the work that you do as an advocate for our student athletes on this campus. And so over the years, what have been some of the common themes that you've seen our athletes struggling with, both inside and outside of the classroom?
So the first thing is the transition to college, which I think all freshman students, it's a huge adjustment period for freshmen in general, but our student athletes are learning how to balance that, 20 to 30 hours in addition of working on their sport. And managing that schedule, I think, is a huge part of that. Understanding what are my expectations, because they're going to look a lot different than what they have been as a high school student athlete. And where do I fit? Not only at this institution, on my team. All of those kinds of things are some initial struggles that I see with our student athletes, and then once they figure it out, they start to blossom in that structure. But then we're working on them developing passions outside of their sport, and that goes along with the identity piece. One thing we say a lot, and we kind of take it from LeBron James, is the more than an athlete tagline, and challenging them that they are more than just their sport. And so what is it that makes them more than their sport? What are their passions going to be, and how can we prepare them to be ready for the transition out of college? And not just preparing them to move into a career field that they want to move into, but be ready to kind of separate with that identity of being an athlete, and that will never truly leave them, but it's been who they are for their whole life,
Right.
pretty much,
Right.
and they don't know who they are without it.
Absolutely.
So we have to prepare them in the best way that we can, and I think that comes from them tapping into their other identities while they're here and getting confidence in that they can be somebody outside of their sport.
Absolutely.
And then I think mental health is huge. I think that's kind of rounds out some of the biggest struggles, and that's going to be, in the classroom. That's going to affect them on the field. Those coping skills to be able to handle adversity. Athletes, they handle failure, or they've experienced failure before because it's just a natural part of sport. But it seems like everything is heightened at the college level as far as the pressure to perform, and so failure maybe feels a lot bigger than it ever has before, and that's something that they have to just learn to struggle with and cope with and overcome. So
Absolutely. And Mike, I know you've seen, just from the multiple lenses of which you serve here, not only within the sport management program, but just on our campus, you've seen a lot of ups and downs of student athletes. What do you feel makes a successful student athlete in today's college environment?
Intentionality. I think self-awareness is probably also a key piece of that, knowing the things that I need to be intentional about. The saying is, if it's important to you, you'll make time for it. If it's not, you'll make an excuse.
Ooh, I like that.
Well, then all of a sudden that really has to become a highlight of my thinking. What are the things that I need to be intentional about? We were on a call earlier talking about mental health, and I think there was a student athlete on there that's like, how do I handle the situation when I am in class, practice, weights, film, all of that, and then I get home at 8 o'clock and I don't know what to do? Is it homework, or, how? I think that intentional piece and being self-aware of, look, I probably need a planner.
Yeah.
I need to set reminders on my phone when things are due. Look, I'm 45 and I have to do the same thing. Those are just general life skills, and not something that, if you've ever had to deal with that, then it's not something that you've experienced. If you're a 5-star athlete and you kind of breezed through high school without too much trouble and not a lot was required of you, you get here and all of a sudden you're in a room with 200 of your best friends, and all of a sudden you are not the big person on campus anymore.
Mm-hmm.
You are one of 200.
Correct.
And then that piece of that identity is now taken,
Right.
you know, and how do I deal with that? So I think a lot of it is just self-awareness and intentionality and understanding your strengths and weaknesses and knowing, you know, if I have a weakness for getting up in the morning and making it to my 8 a.m. class, then I need to be putting some systems in place that help me prevent that. I think that's probably the biggest piece for me in terms of success is just that focus on being intentional about the things that you need to be intentional about.
I think one of the things, you know, tapping into and at least highlighting some of the strong skills of our student athletes. So not only are they usually, and it's not for everybody, but usually they're good team players. They're good at structure. They're good at taking constructive criticism. They're adaptable. They have to deal with whether it's coaching changes or recovering from an injury. They have a level of resilience. And I think it's how do you hone in on that and let them see how that also is applicable outside of being an athlete. So you've learned this, you know, you've been playing, you know, basketball, football, baseball, whatever for this many years of your life, and these traits and these qualities you have really executed pretty well to make it to where you are. Now let's take those same traits and qualities and let's see how we can apply them to real world situations.
Mm-hmm.
You know, whether it's managing conflict outside of being an athlete, you know, how do you be resilient in whatever workplace that you're going into, whatever that is. And I think that approach is really going to benefit the athlete themselves, but I think, you know, as a group, you know, and I think it needs to be a unified effort between all of us. You know, how do we find ways to really tap in and really make that clear to them? Because I think they struggle with that sometimes. And so honestly, kind of wrapping it up a little bit. So Sarah, my question for you is, with all of those complex factors of being a student athlete, what do you think is necessary for our student athletes to succeed academically?
So I think exactly what you said is getting them to realize that they have a lot of the skills necessary to be successful. It's applying them in the setting of the classroom, and you know, wanting to maintain that level of success across all parts of who they are, not just on the quarter field, but in all other elements and activities that they participate in. We have some great support systems in place academically for our student athletes in our Athletic Academic Student Services Center. Tutor availability, mentoring, helping with some of those organization skills, connecting them with resources as they need them. So I think some of those systems are in place. I think one thing that we can continue to just do is building the relationship with the student athlete and making sure we are connecting them to the content, to what their major is, to their transition into the college environment, and continuing to model and using the upperclassmen as examples, as good models for, you know, someone who's maybe gone through the weeds and had to figure it out and can be a guiding light. So one thing we want to start up is a little bit more peer mentoring, really connecting those seniors with those freshmen and helping support them in the classroom and in the transition. And if they can learn to balance, and balance isn't always the best word and everything, but you know, they can be successful. So.
And Mike, I'll close with you, and I'm just curious if you were to give maybe 2 or 3 tips or words of wisdom to any student athlete listening and kind of figuring out how they're going to make it through not only this current state of time with COVID and whatnot, but just navigating the challenges of identity as a whole. What would those 2 or 3 tips be from you?
I would say mindset needs to be a big piece of that. There's nothing that we can really do to change the environment that we're in right now. We are in a global pandemic. Okay. We are navigating through unheard of levels of political division. We are witnessing unheralded social injustice, and we can't change any of what has happened, but we can put ourselves in a mindset to be able to change how we respond to it. And I think that that's probably the biggest key. If you make a 0 on a quiz, you're not going to be able to change that necessarily. But you can change how you respond and say, okay, well, that's one of many. I'm going to be okay, and I'm going to respond the way that I need to respond. So I think, just to wrap it up, mindset is probably the biggest thing, and understanding that that's a conscious choice.
Well, thank you for that. Once again, I want to say thank you to both of you for taking time to come and speak with us today. And also thank you for all the work that you guys do on behalf of our student athletes here on this campus. So thank you for coming, and I will be chatting with you guys later. All right, so we've been discussing the balance needed to be a successful student athlete while in college. So joining us now is a junior and sport management major and women's basketball player, Rachel Johnson. So Rachel, I'm happy to have you here this afternoon. So welcome to the table.
Thank you.
All right, so tell us a little bit about yourself, Rachel. So specifically, what position do you play here for our women's basketball team?
I'm a junior this year, transferring in from a junior college. I'm a shooting guard. I play that position. I play the point guard position. I just switch and rotate out with those two. I'm from Eufaula, Alabama, and just in Kansas. I like it so far. So.
One of the things I find interesting, and we had one of the professors from the sport management program on earlier, and we talked about the connection between our student athletes and our sport management program. So what made you choose sport management as a program?
Well, not being like, most kids when they grow up saying they want to be a nurse, dentist. Like, I was kind of different. I like sports, like football, basketball, soccer, all the sports. So I just wanted to keep in that area and just manage sports or be a coach, athletic director or something like that.
Have you found it challenging? So as you play and as you're being a student as well, have you, at least the identity piece, have you found it challenging to focus on what your life will possibly look like post-college sports? Have you thought about that? Has that been something that...
Not really, but it's really something to think about. I need to start focusing on what, that's really important though. Like,
one of the things I have found interesting in teaching in this program for a few years and working with a lot of athletes, it's that piece right there, that level of connection between your identity as an athlete and what your identity is going to be at some point when you're no longer an athlete.
Yeah, that's true.
And so that's just been kind of interesting to me. So, and I know you have a lot on your plate. I know you personally, so I know you have a lot on your plate. What do you find it challenging, or what is challenging about succeeding academically and to be successful as an athlete as well?
It's really tough I know a lot of athletes across the world, like we struggle with maintaining, classwork, schoolwork, tests, everything. It's really, in practice, games, it's really stressful at times, but I mean, you really have to have that mindset where you just got to do it. You just got to do it.
One of the things that I've noticed is the qualities of a student athlete. So you all are pretty resilient by nature, and I think those are some of the things that you guys have worked diligently on. And I've seen you. I mean, you're in class all the time when you can be, and you do really well on your schoolwork. And so for me, where does that drive come from for you to bring that same type of energy not only on the court but in the classroom? Where does that come from?
Just my mindset of being, just wanting to be the best, like have the best grades. They want us to be successful on and off the court. So I take my academics very seriously, and I just want to be the best and doing what I'm supposed to do. Be responsible and adult. I'm 21 now, and I'm just like trying to learn how to, do my academic. I really had to learn how to put school first before basketball, because at one point I was basketball, no school. Like, failing the 9th grade, you know, not being able to play basketball that year because I just cared about basketball. And I had to really get school first, then basketball. So now, after a couple of years playing basketball, like, I have a really great story. Like, I tell people that story all the time, how school is very important, and it's very important.
So if you could share with us a little bit, what is the best and the worst part about being a student athlete?
Well, the best part is it's like you're a celebrity. Like, sometimes you just, people know you, like, you don't even know someone. They be like, hey, Rachel, like, great game. I'm like, hi, thank you so much. And it's like, the bad part, it's really not, I don't know. It can be in ways, you know, because you have to set an example for everybody's, you're always being watched.
Always.
So, like, one bad mistake, like, one bad mess up is, like, that'll ruin you. So I can say just people are always watching you. That's probably me.
So something that obviously that's really relevant for everybody right now is COVID-19. And so, you know, this pandemic has pretty much just turned everything for everybody upside down. So the adjustment to being in this pandemic clearly has not been easy. And so my question for you is, how has COVID impacted you personally, academically, and athletically?
Personally, it's really stressful because, I mean, something like this happening out of nowhere is just really devastating because, you know, 1 minute, you know, you're out without a mask, just fine, breathing there. Now everywhere you go, you have to have the mask on, and it's just, I don't know. This year hasn't been a good one for me and my family because we had a lot of relatives that caught COVID, and it's just a lot of people I know had it, and it's just really just hard. And with basketball and school, mainly is, you know, us basketball team, we've been shut down 4, 5, 6 times already. We have a game next Friday, and this week is our first week back from being sat out from COVID.
Oh, wow.
And we're trying to get in shape again and get moving, and we play next Friday. So it's really been stressful being out, missing class due to quarantining, and I'm just like, gosh, it's really tough.
How has it affected any of your schoolwork specifically, or how you finished out the semester?
Well, not really, but it's just, you know, not being in class and learning, you know, being there. I'm a hands-on person. I like to be there and know what's going on, you know. That it affected it a little bit, but I think I'm going to finish strong.
Do you feel like you have, as a student athlete, do you feel like you have support systems in place, both from a personal standpoint and within our athletics and or your program, to help you be successful?
Yes, they want us to be successful on and off the court, and mainly they focus on academics. So during all this, I feel like, you know, with the sports management program, and I see get a lot of emails about diversity groups and like all the kind of support groups for us to, as athletes, to, you know, get in and join. So it's been good so far. Like,
so outside of being a basketball player, do you have much time to feel like a 21-year-old or
No, not at all. Like, it's really, I don't have time to do anything. I leave the house at 7 a.m. Monday through Friday, get home at like 7 that night. And my Monday, Wednesday class at 7 that night, and I don't get back till late. I have a little dog, and he's at home, and I'm like, God, what is he doing while I'm gone so long? But I don't have much time to enjoy.
So with the schedule that you keep, and I think sometimes it's often that you find, you know, that, you know, a lot of kids want to be a student athlete, or they want to go to college, they want to play D1 and all this stuff. Maybe what are some tips, or at least words of wisdom, or maybe some advice, maybe 1 or 2 things that you would then give to some incoming student athlete, that young girl that wants to walk in your shoes one day? What advice would you give her?
I would tell her, first, coming from a junior college, like being at that level, you know, you had to get it. A lot of people say you had to get it out the mud, or like you had to work. We had to work extra hard to get here. Me personally, I worked extra hard to get to this level. So the thing I would tell her is, no matter where you at, what situation you're in, you have to work hard for whatever you're trying to get. Like, you just work hard, and everything else will fall in place.
Hey, trust me, I think that's how most of us, those that have come from backgrounds or maybe have experienced some adversity, having the level of not only resiliency, but the ability to have that grit, if you will. Yes,
that's true.
And how do we survive? How do we thrive? And sometimes that's challenging and struggling. And you're from Alabama, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so you're here. Do you have any family here?
None.
So how has that experience been with you adapting to, this COVID and playing and being alone?
Yeah, it's stressful sometimes. I just feel so lonely, and I call my family. I'm like, do y'all miss me yet? And I'm like, can I come home? And they're like, no, you got to stay, stay up there and make us proud. I'm just, stay to myself, stay inside, stay with my teammates in the little circle we have. But that's about it. I just pray and just hope I get to go home soon for Christmas, maybe, hopefully.
And I think that's one great thing about being on a team is then you kind of build that level of family and community within your team, which is also an added bonus, if you will. So pretty much, wrapping it up, my last major question for you is 3 to 5 years from now, where do you hope that you are?
Well, of course, I want to play professional basketball, but if that doesn't work out for me, I would want to be a coach for a Division I, Division II, Division III JUCO, high school. It doesn't matter. I just want to coach.
Just want to coach.
And, I see myself married, kids, all that, so.
All that good stuff.
All that good stuff. I want the happily ever after life.
White picket fence?
Yes. Yeah.
Well, once again, Rachel, I know you're busy for sure, and so I appreciate you making time for us today. And it's been fun getting to hang out with you and get to know you a little bit on and off the court, if you will. So once again, thank you, and I appreciate you, and hope you have a safe and healthy rest of your year.
Thank you.
So thank you to everyone for listening. We really appreciate your support and your viewership. As always, we'd love to hear from you. Shoot us some feedback or leave us a comment and let us know what's on your mind. I'd also like to issue a small challenge to our listeners today. If you're someone who has been keeping up with us for a while now and you find value in what we're doing, do us a favor and share this podcast with your friends. Our hope is to consistently grow our network and produce valuable content that you guys want to hear. Thanks for your support. Have a good one and join us next time on Let's Talk About It.